Praise the Lord, everyone. This is Brother Matthew Buckland. I wanted to share a little devotion with you during our time of lockdown. Sorry, we haven't been very active on our YouTube the last few days, but we wanted to just share a little word of encouragement with you and let you know that we are working to try to have content up for this weekend that we'll be able to share with you, and you'll be able to um, have a time of worship in your home, since according to the government, um, prognostications we have, will still be in a shelter in place command through at least through this weekend. But I wanted to give you a little word of encouragement, a little devotion, um, a little something from the Word to help encourage you during this time. During my personal prayer time and contemplation, a verse kept coming to my mind, and I was reading through it and doing a little bit of study on it. And it's from John chapter 14. The first part of that verse says, "Let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me." And then Jesus goes on to share with his disciples, says that he's got a plan. He's getting ready to leave, and he's going to go prepare heaven and get everything ready for us. But it was that the initial few words of that first verse of John chapter 14, "Let not your heart be troubled." I think a lot of times we don't realize what was happening leading into this verse. In John chapter 13, we have a recording of what's commonly referred to as the Last Supper. Judas has just left the disciples. Jesus has just been talking to Peter at the end of John chapter 13, and Peter asked Jesus, "Where are you going to go?" And Jesus said, "Where I'm going, you can't go with me." And Peter tells Jesus, says, "Lord, no matter where you go, I'll go." And says, as a matter of fact, he says, I'll even lay down my life for you," which really is kind of ironic the way it's said, because Jesus is getting ready to go and lay down his life for Peter. And we understand that Peter, he had the desire, he had the passion to follow after Jesus. But we all know the story how Peter did end up denying Christ, but then came back to his senses, repented, and he preached the great day of Pentecost message. So all of this is taking place at the end of John chapter 13. And then we open up John chapter 14, and right in the midst, right after Jesus has told Peter, "You're going to deny me." He says, "You think you're going to follow after me, but you're getting ready to deny me. Don't you realize what this is all about?" The very next verse, Judas has just left. Peter's been told he's going to deny Christ. The next words that Jesus says is, "Let not your heart be troubled." The disciples were in a situation. They were there with Jesus. They'd been following after Jesus, but they were in a situation that didn't make much sense. They didn't understand. They weren't sure what was going to happen from that point forward. The Pharisees were after Jesus. And the disciples knew that. It seemed like the world was they were living on the edge, if we can put it that way. They didn't know what was going to happen. And in the midst of all of that, Jesus tells them, he says, "Don't let your heart be troubled." He says, I've got a plan. This is what's going to happen. And then as he continues on in John chapter 14, he says, "I've got a plan." And then he says, "Don't worry, I'm not going to leave you." He says, "Even though I may leave in body," he says, my spirit will come to you. I'll come to you. And in the midst of this, shall we say, trying time, we're in an unprecedented time with this virus situation. We're in our second week of living in our flat, in our apartment, without leaving. We're not sure what's going on. I'm receiving notices from embassies and governments saying that you can't travel, you can't leave. I'm reading reports of people being arrested on the streets, and in countries that are in this lockdown. There are some places that are running on food shortages and things like that. And it seems like the world is going crazy, and we don't know what's going to happen. But I want to share the words of Jesus, the words that Jesus shared with his disciples. I believe those are applicable to us today. Don't let your heart be troubled. We need to understand who we're serving. We need to understand that God has a plan. In the midst of all this turmoil, in the midst of all this chaos, I've also read that the internet was overloaded last weekend because so many churches were streaming and more people logged on to watch and be a part of streaming services, and more people were logged into the internet for that purpose than any other thing that they'd ever been logged into the internet for in the history of the world. It was actually crashing. It was crashing webcasting services because so many people wanted to be in church and wanted to hear the voice of God and hear a word from God and be a part of a community of believers. I want to let you know that we don't have to let our hearts be troubled. We don't have to be led by fear, but we need to understand God has a plan. God knows what he's doing. This doesn't come as a shock to God. He knows the end from the beginning. He's got a plan and he doesn't leave us. Even though we may be locked into our house, even though we may be in a situation that we've never experienced before, Jesus said, I'll send my spirit to you. Jesus said, I'll come to you. So no matter where you're at, he can reach through the quarantines. He can reach through the government borders. Jesus Christ can reach to wherever we are, and he will be there with us because he's not going to leave us alone. He's not going to leave us comfortless, but he's going to come to us. So I just want to share a word of encouragement with you today from Mezinárodní letniční společenství, from the Prague Church, the International Pentecostal Fellowship in Prague, from the pastoral team, from the ministers of the church. We want to let you know that God knows where you're at. Jesus Christ doesn't leave us. He's with us, and he'll be with you. Hold on tight to him. Don't let your heart be troubled, but be encouraged in the Lord today. God bless you.